Michael James, it's good to see you again today, first Sunday of every month. Welcome to San Diego and welcome to our group, which is drawing a lot of people who are big friends of yours. I'm glad to have you here with us today. So without further ado, I'm just going to go over the ground rules. They're very brief. First, for those of you watching this on YouTube, the recording, of course, and you are certainly welcome to join us here live the first Sunday of every month in the San Diego. We've become an international organization here. Just send me your email address and I'll make sure I put you on the list. My name is Ted. My email is newsguy55@aol.com. Newsguy55@aol.com. And you're also welcome to join us any Sunday of the month. We meet every week at 10 o'clock California time. You'll get advisories about that every week. And we cover only Ramana material. So you're welcome to join us, not just on the Sundays when Michael's here. Michael, it's time for the first question, and you pointed out to me, and I'm grateful that you did.
Before you begin on the first question, can I just say something?
Of course you can.
In the email you sent with the Zoom link, you included today's quote. I don't know where you got that quotation from, but it's a slightly altered version of what originally was recorded in Day by Day. And some of the nice parts of that, what Devaraj Mudliar recorded there, are actually missing in what you quoted.
Do you have it there in front of you? Because
yes, I do. But and another thing is, in the original recording, the word samskara is not explained, but it's been explained in what you quoted. But whoever has explained it has explained it wrongly. So I'll explain that. But first, I'll read it as it is given in Day by Day.
Okay.
What Bhagavan is recorded to have said is, it is false to speak of realization. What is there to realize? The real is as it is, ever. How to real-ise it? All that is required is this. We have realized the unreal, i.e. regarded as real what is unreal. We have to give up this attitude. That is all that is required for us to attain jnana. We are not creating anything new or achieving something which we did not have before. The illustration given in books is this. We dig a well and create a huge pit. The akasa, space, the akasa in the pit or well has not been created by us. We just removed the earth which was filling the akasa there. The akasa was there then and is also there now. Similarly, we simply have to throw out all the age-long samskaras which are inside us, and when all of them have been given up, the self will shine alone. He also said, mukti, jnana, dhyana is our real nature. They are other names for the self.
Go ahead.
Two things I was going to say about this. That is, the part was omitted in what you had quoted there, which I imagine you got from some other source online. When Bhagavan said, how to realize it, all that is required is this. We have realized the unreal. We have to give up this attitude. Actually, what Bhagavan often used to say, though Bhagavan generally didn't speak English, he understood enough English, and he often used to point out about this English word realization, but it is not really an appropriate word to use in this context. And what he often used to say is, the problem is, there's nothing for us to realize because what is real is always real. The problem is, but we have now realized the unreal, as it's recorded here. But what Bhagavan often used to say is, all that is required is that we unrealize the unreal and the real alone will remain. I don't know whether he may have said it slightly differently on this occasion, but that is apparently how he often used to say it. We have to unrealize the unreal. That is, we've now realized the unreal, we have to unrealize it. And what will remain is the real. That's a very nice way of putting it.
It really is. uninformed, it sounds a little bit like double talk, but it's not at all.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
all of us here get it. Thank you for amplifying that
yeah.
quote, changing
And
the word.
the other thing is the word samskara, which Devaraja Mudliar didn't explain. He just recorded age-long samskaras. But in what you have quoted, someone has added an explanation. They have interpret the samskaras as subtle impressions of our past actions.
I saw that, yeah.
Yeah, this is a very common misunderstanding. That is, the word samskara and vasana are used interchangeably in this context. What vasanas or samskaras mean in the context of Bhagavan teachings or Vedanta more generally, it doesn't mean impression, it means inclination. Impressions are what we receive, or at least seem to receive. So perceptions are impressions. Memories are past impressions that we are able to recall. But vasanas or samskaras are something different. They are the inclinations. They are elements of our will. So this is why I mention this now, because this is a very fundamental misunderstanding. If you listen to many to lecturers on people who lecture on yoga or Vedanta, they will often, and even Buddhism, I think, they will often translate samskara or vasana as impression. That is a misunderstanding, because they then, that implies, but it's because of what the impressions that we've received, but is what influences our behavior. That is not the case. Vasanas or samskaras are our inclinations. They're the volitional tendencies. Generally in books on Bhagavan's teachings, vasanas are translated as tendencies, which is it's not the word I favor using. I prefer inclination, but tendency is not wrong. But when we say inclination, you can have a tendency. The problem with tendency, it doesn't convey the volitional aspect so much. For example, a person who is elderly may have a tendency to fall. That's not what they have. They don't have an inclination to fall. They don't like to fall, but they just have a tendency to fall because they're unsteady on their feet. So it doesn't mean tendency in that way. It means a volitional tendency. In other words, an inclination. And as Bhagavan made clear, the vasanas are the seeds that give rise to likes, dislikes, desires, attachments. So the totality of all our vasanas are what are called chittam. Chittam in this context means will. But you can often see in books on Vedanta or yoga, but chittam is translated as memory. Because they take the vasanas or samskaras to be impressions, they therefore conclude that chittam means memory. It doesn't mean memory. Memory is one of the gross functions of the mind. That is, the mind is is classified as having four functions: manas, buddhi, chittam, and ahankaram. Manas means all the, in this context, means all the grosser functions of the mind: perceptions, memories, thoughts, feelings, emotions, and so on. All of these are all these grosser functions are classified as manas. So in this classification, manas, buddhi, chitta, mana, hankaram, that the word manas means mind. We need to understand according to the context, the sense in which it's being used. But when it's talked about, the word manas is used as one of these four antakaranas, as they're called, inner instruments. Manas means the grosser functions of the mind. That is as I said, the perceptions, memories, thoughts, feelings, emotions. All of these are what are classified as manas. Buddhi means the intellect, the discerning, judging, discriminating, reasoning aspect of the mind. The chittam is the will. That's all the vasanas or samskaras. And the vasanas or samskaras are the seeds that sprout as likes, dislikes, desires, and fears, and so on. So the chittam in this context means the will, and ahankaram means ego. The function of ego, that each of these a particular function, as Bhagavan said, these are not four different things, they're four different functions. So what is the function of ego? The function of ego is abhimanam. Abhimanam means the attachment and identification. So ego is the I, but is aware of itself as I am this mind that is thinking, remembering, perceiving, and so on. I am this intellect that is reasoning and judging, and so on. I am this chittam, this will that likes this and doesn't like that, and so on. But as I say, often the word chittam is misinterpreted as memory. This shows a lack of even very learned scholars, people who are well versed in all the Vedanta texts or all the yoga texts. It's such a common mistake. And another reason why this is a very serious error, but vasanas or samskaras, as Bhagavan says or as he implies in verse 2 of Upadesha Undiyar, they are the seeds that give rise to actions. So all actions begin from samskaras. So if we take samskara to mean impression, or samskara or vasana, as I say, they both mean the same. If we take them to mean impressions, it means our actions are being motivated by impressions. That is not the case. It's the inclinations, it's the volitional inclinations, the tendency to like this or to dislike that, to desire this or to be averse to that. This is what is meant by vasana. So it is very important to understand correctly what is meant by vasana or samskara. And I say this because I assume many people here have read a lot or watched a lot of videos on this subject. You will find it very, very prevalent. The term samskara or vasana is interpreted as impression, and that the word chittam is interpreted as will. As memory. That is not the case. But vasanas or samskaras are the inclinations. They make up the chittam, which is collectively, which chittam means in this context means the will. And regarding one more thing on this point, these four antakaranas, that is, three of them correspond to three of the five sheaths. Manas is what is also referred to as the manamaya kosha, the sheath composed of mind. Buddhi is what is referred to as the vijnanamaya kosha, the sheath composed of intellect. The chittam or will is what is referred to as the anandamaya kosha. It's called the anandamaya kosha because what is the driving force behind all our inclinations, the one fundamental inclination we all have is we all desire to be happy. We all are seeking happiness in all the efforts efforts we make and actions we do. What is driving that is they're driven by so many different types of vasanas, but all these vasanas, what they all share in common, they're all an inclination to seek happiness in this or that. That is why it is called Anandamaya Kosha. But of these four, Manas, Buddhi, Chitta, Mana, Ahankaram, the only one that is not a sheath is the Ahankara, ego. Ego is not any of the five sheaths, but it is that which identifies all the five sheaths as I. So the I that is aware of itself as I am this body, I am this life, I am this mind, I am this intellect, I am this will, that is ego. So whereas the other three functions are sheaves, the subtlest of all the functions, ahankara, is not a sheath, but it is that which identifies itself as sheath and thereby covers up its real nature, which is that is, as Bhagavan often explained, ego is the false awareness, I am this body, in which the term body refers to all these five sheaths collectively. Our real nature, what we actually are, is just the simple awareness, I am. But when we rise as ego, we're always aware of ourselves as I am. But as ego, we're not aware of ourselves as just I am. We're aware of ourselves as I am this body. And only when we're only when we rise as ego and consequently are aware of ourselves as I am this body, are we consequently aware of other things. So the ego is the root of all the problems. But what is, though ego is not the vasanas, it is the nature of ego to have vasanas. And this is something that I will talk about in answer to some of the questions. I will talk about more in answer to some of the questions that have been raised today.
Very good, Michael.
Yeah.
And endless thanks to, before we even get to question number one, commenting so wonderfully on this quote. I think I would probably rank the way I've been exposed to people talking about Ramana's teachings. I would probably rank samskaras and vasanas being number one as tendencies, as you pointed out.
Yeah.
That's number two, incorrectly, as impressions, as you
Yes.
pointed and explained. So thank you for that clarification.
Generally, in books on Bhagavan's teachings, their vasanas or samskaras are translated as tendencies. But if you go to if you listen to other people talking about Vedanta or yoga, you will almost invariably hear them translating it as impressions. So the English books on Bhagavan's teachings are closer to the correct meaning than most other books on Vedanta and yoga and similar subjects.
Right. If a person goes to Google, as an example, looking for excellent Baba or Ramana quotes, you'll find probably hundreds of them, certainly dozens and dozens.
Yeah.
Many probably are source rewritten and rehandled by people.
Yeah.
Real quick question to you. In your estimation, what would be the number one source of really terribly rich and meaningful and accurate Baba quotes for people to look for?
Bhagavan quotes, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say Bhagavan's own original writings. They're the most reliable. So works like Uludu Napadu, Upadesha Undiya, Nana, that's Who Am I, Atma-vichara, Arunachala Stuti Panchakam, and so on. So Bhagavan's own original writings are the best source. All the other, second to Bhagavan's own original writings, I would say Guru Vachaka Kavai, because they were recorded by Murugan, who was really in tune with Bhagavan's teachings.
Yeah, there's so many rich ones. I can't believe it when I go looking for them, and I often do wonder, just as you pointed out, how close this is to the original translation of Ramana's quotes, because they can be pretty far askew if a person gets in there.
Well, the recordings in English books like Talks and Day by Day, they are often not very accurate. Day by Day, actually, though there's a lot less of Bhagavan's teachings in Day by Day than in Talks. Talks is a bigger book, and it's Day by Day has more stories and so on. But actually, what Devaraj Mudliya recorded is generally more accurate than what is recorded in Talks, because Devaraj Mudliya, he didn't always understand things correctly, but at least he hadn't read a lot. He hadn't read many books, so his mind wasn't filled with many ideas. So some things he didn't understand correctly, but he didn't insert it. By and large, he didn't insert his own understanding in there. Whereas the person who recorded Talks, Munagala Venkataramaya, he had read a lot, and there's actually a story about this. That is, for some time for a few years in the 1930s, for quite a few years in the 1930s, Munagala Venkataramaya was the official interpreter. So if anyone came who didn't know Tamil or Telugu or Malayalam, because Bhagavan generally answered in Tamil, but if people came from Andhra Pradesh and asked questions in Telugu, Bhagavan was conversant in Telugu, he could answer in Telugu. He could also answer in Malayalam. He would very rarely answer in English, but generally, though he understood English, he generally, for some reason, he didn't answer in English. So if people came, people from other parts of India or from abroad came and asked questions in English, the official interpreter for many years was Munakala Venkaramaya, who recorded talks. One day, when someone came and asked a question in English, Munakala Venkaramaya wasn't present. Bhagavan looked around, seeing he wasn't there, Bhagavan kept quiet. But Bhagavan understood the question, but he didn't, for some reason, he preferred not to answer in English. Then someone said to Bhagavan, Devaraja Mudliya is here. He's well educated. He was a lawyer, Devaraja Mudliya, by profession. They said Devaraja Mudliya will be able to translate. So then Bhagavan started replying in Tamil, and Devaraja Mudliya translated into English Bhagavan's replies. And when the conversation was over, Bhagavan remarked, Abba, today what I said was interpreted as I said it. He didn't say anything more than that, but what people who were present, they understood, because those who knew Tamil understood how much Munakala Venkaramaya had a tendency to interpret Bhagavan's answers. Rather than simply translating them, he would interpret them and sometimes add his own explanations. The same has happened in talks, which is why there's a lot in talks, but isn't really, it's recorded as if Bhagavan said it, but it isn't actually as Bhagavan said it, or it isn't exactly what Bhagavan said.
Yeah, I've witnessed something similar for years as a Sai Baba devotee in India when I was there, listening to Baba speak in Telugu and intersperse it with some English words, and then read the official translation later, which was considerably different in some key areas.
Yeah.
Interpretation has to play into it, whether it's correct interpretation or not, to some degree, I would think.
Oh, inevitably. When we listen to something, we are interpreting it in our mind. So the impression that something makes is how we have understood that.
Yeah.
That's why even Devaraja Mudliya, he goes wrong someplace. He's particularly confusing when it comes to one thing he admitted that he always had difficulty understanding was the thing about predestination. Once Devaraja Mudliya told Sadhu Om, one thing I could never understand, Bhagavan said everything is predetermined, but at the same time, he said that we have Icha Kriya Swatantra, that is freedom of will and action. I could never understand how these could be reconciled. So I often used to ask Bhagavan, and whenever Bhagavan explained to me, it was clear to me. And I thought, I've understood. But then after some time, I'd again be confused about it. And again, I would ask Bhagavan. And then Devaraja Mudliya asked Sadhu Om, can you explain it to me so that I can understand? And Sadhu Om explained it to him. I mean, he said, yes, this is what Bhagavan used to explain to me. And it's always so clear when I hear it explained, but then somehow I forget it again. So some of what Devaraja Mudliya has recorded in this regard, particularly regarding predetermination, it's not actually very clear because he himself didn't understand clearly.
Well, I'm very happy I sent an unclear quote today. So you could go.
Well, it wasn't unclear. First thing I noticed was that interpretation of samskara. Then I thought, this looks to me like a passage that I remember from Day by Day. So I searched Day by Day, found the passage, and I saw some of the nice parts were missing. And also that Devaraja Mudliya simply uses the word Bhagavan used, samskara, expecting people to understand it. But whoever has someone in between has added their own explanation there. So I just wanted to correct that.
Great. And before we get into question number one, Marty's got a quick question for you, I assume, about this topic. Marty.
Okay, it has to do with prarabdha, samskaras, and I mean prarabdha. We're taught all of our physical actions are predestined, and yet when we have inclinations or samskaras, and we do something, is it a result of the prarabdha, or is it a result of the samskara, or how do they work together, or don't they? I don't understand any of that.
Yeah, I know this is a subject many people. It's actually very simple. Firstly, it is not correct to say all our actions are determined by prarabdha. What Bhagavan said in the note he wrote for his mother is, the first sentence of that note he wrote, in accordance with the prarabdha, the destiny of each one, he who is for that, being there, causes to dance, literally it means. What he means by that is, he who is for that means God, the ordainer of prarabdha. Being there means being in each place, implying being in the heart of each one of us. Atma-vichara literally means cause to dance. It implies he causes us to act. But we need to pay close attention to what he says there. He says, in accordance with the prarabdha. What that means is, prarabdha is the fruit of our past actions. So prarabdha is the fruit, means what we are to experience as a result of what we have done. So the prarabdha is fruit. It is not about its prarabdha, though it is called one of the three karmas. It is not actually a karma in the sense of action. It is a karma pala, a fruit of action. So prarabdha determines what we are to experience. So everything that we are to experience in this lifetime, everything that is to happen to us, is predetermined. But in order for that prarabdha to unfold, certain actions are necessary on our part, actions of mind, speech, and body. For example, if it's your destiny to enjoy a nice meal today, you have to do whatever actions are necessary. It may be necessary for you to cook the nice meal, or to go to your friend's house, your friend may have cooked a nice meal, and then you have to put the food in your mouth. So all actions that are necessary in order for you to enjoy that nice meal, those are all predetermined. But that doesn't mean that every action we do is predetermined. He makes that clear in the next two sentences. In the second sentence of that note he wrote for his mother, he wrote, Entrum naduvadadu, Entrum naduvadadu, enrichikanum naduvadu. That means whatever is not to happen will not happen in spite of any amount of effort. When he says in spite of any amount of effort, that word mrichikanam means effort or trying. So that clearly implies we have the freedom to try to experience things we are not destined to experience. So you may want to have, we have so many desires for things that we want, and we often make efforts to fulfill those desires. But if what we desire is not, if we are not destined to enjoy what we desire, however much effort we make, however much we want it, and however much we try to achieve it, we will not achieve it. So the very fact that Bhagavan says enrichikanam implies that our actions are not all determined by prarabdha. They're only the actions, but it's not that the prarabdha determines the action. In the first sentence, he said, Adakanavan, that means God, will make us act in accordance with the prarabdha. So the actions we do are not prarabdha. They're actions we are made to do in accordance with prarabdha. But many of the actions we do are actions we want to do. And this is why we cannot determine which act. People say, how do I know whether this action is according to prarabdha or according to my will? we cannot easily distinguish this, because often these go hand in hand. It may be your destiny today to eat a nice tasty meal. So the actions you need to do in order to eat that nice tasty meal, you'll be made to do. But you also have a desire to eat a nice tasty meal. So those actions are being driven not only by God in accordance with your prarabdha, but also by your will. So we can't say, so we can't distinguish which actions or to what extent any particular action is driven by God's will and to what extent it's driven by our will. So that, as I say, the second sentence he says, what is never to happen will not happen in spite of any amount of however much we may try, or however much effort we may make. And the next sentence, he says the opposite. What is to happen will not stop in spite of any amount of obstacle. So if we're destined to undergo some unpleasant experiences, we can want to avoid those experiences, we can try to avoid those experiences, but we cannot avoid them because they are destined to happen. So what that implies is we have what Bhagavan called Ichya-svatantra, which means freedom of will. We're free to, it may not be my destiny to become the president of the United States or to walk on the moon or to climb to the top of Mount Everest. That doesn't stop me wanting to do so. It also doesn't stop me trying to do so. So my wanting to do so is freedom of action. My wanting to do so is freedom of will. I'm free to want whatever I want. And my trying to do so is freedom of action. That's what Bhagavan called kriya-svatantra. And these two freedoms go hand in hand. So Bhagavan generally talked about ichya-kriya-svatantra. In English books, wherever you see the words free will recorded in dialogues with Bhagavan, there's no word in Tamil for free will. The term that Bhagavan used was ichya-kriya-svatantra, which means freedom of will and action, which is loosely translated in English as free will. But ichya-kriya-svatantra is actually a much more precise way of saying it, because if you say free will, like philosophers and so many people debate, do we have free will or not? It's not very clear what they're talking about. Are they talking about will, or are they talking about freedom of will? In many cases, they're not actually talking about will or about freedom of will. They're talking about freedom of action, the freedom to do as we want. So the terms Bhagavan used are much more precise terms. So whatever actions we do, under the sway of our vasanas means our inclinations, those actions are what are called agamya. So as I say, if it's your destiny to eat a nice meal today, you will be made to do whatever actions are necessary. But if you also have a desire to eat that nice meal, as I'm sure most, I mean, who wouldn't want to eat a nice meal if it's offered, particularly if we're hungry? So that almost all our actions are, we act primarily under the sway of our vasanas. Some of our actions are also being directed by God. We're made to act in a certain way, but even those actions that we are made to do by God are also, in most cases, actions that we want to do, but we're doing under the sway of our vasanas.
But wait, that implies that we can do things that are beyond God's will.
Yes, yes.
If we're thinking, I want to go do this, and I go do it,
but
it doesn't have anything to do with God's will or prarabdha.
But what you can't do, you can supposing you want, you're very short of money, you have no money and you're very hungry. You can want to go and to a shop and steal. because it's the only way you're so hungry, you're ready to go to a shop and steal. So
Mhm.
you go to a shop, and you go to a shop with the intention of stealing some food in order to eat it. But if it's not your destiny to eat that food, you can want to eat it, you can try to take it, but you will be caught. And you will not, something will obstruct you experiencing it. So we have the freedom of will. We have the freedom
So
to
then your
want whatever we
parabda would
want.
be to spend some time in jail.
Yeah, maybe you're prarabdha to spend some time in jail. Yes,
So
exactly.
you don't know what the parabda is. You
Yeah,
don't know
yeah,
what the
yeah,
result
yeah,
is.
yeah,
So-
yeah. Exactly. But we have freedom to want. We can want anything. Nobody can stop you wanting something. So we have freedom of will. We can also try to experience what we want to experience, but we cannot experience it unless it is prarabdha. So the actions we do under the sway of our will, which is the vast majority of the actions we do, are what are called agamya. Agamya are the actions that bear fruit. The fruit of those agamya gets stored in what is called sanchita. The word sanchita means a heap or pile. That is the heap or pile of the fruits of our past actions, but we haven't yet experienced. And we will not experience those fruits in this lifetime. All the fruits of our actions get stored in sanchita. For each life, God, or let's say Bhagavan, because Bhagavan is God or Guru, will select those fruits of our past actions, but will be most conducive for us to for our spiritual development if we experience them. So that selection of the fruits of our past actions, but we are given to experience in this lifetime, is what is called prarabdha. So prarabdha actually presupposes freedom of will, because if we had no freedom of will and no freedom of action, if all our actions were actions we're made to do by God, then God should experience the fruit. We shouldn't experience the fruit because we're not the doer. We are the doer because we are using our freedom of will and action. So,
Michael, we have another question on this same topic. Is it okay if we continue with talking about this?
yeah. Can I just say one thing? So, prarabdha, destiny, determines what we are to experience. Freedom of will and action determines what we want to experience and what we try to experience. They're two completely distinct domains. So prarabdha cannot prevent us wanting to experience something. It cannot prevent us trying to experience it, but it will prevent us experiencing it unless it happens to be part of our prarabdha. So prarabdha doesn't limit our freedom of will and action. Our freedom of will and action doesn't impinge upon prarabdha, because we can want anything we want, and we can try to achieve anything we want, but we cannot achieve it unless it is in prarabdha. So there is no conflict between freedom of will and action on the one hand and predetermination on the other hand. What is predetermined is not our actions, but what we are to experience. And
Okay.
in order to experience that, some actions will be made to do. So we can say those actions. Bhagavan doesn't say those actions are predetermined. He said we are made to do those actions by God in accordance with our prarabdha.
So let's go on to in a second, Bruce, but first I want to say real quickly, if I were still a reporter, meaning if I were still making an income from being a journalist, I would say today breaking news, because I think what I heard you say, and you kind of varied it a little bit as you spoke more about it, is that our destiny is not necessarily our destiny. We might have experiences in our lives that are not part of our destiny, that change destiny at the last minute, depending on our.
No, that isn't at all what I said. Bhagavan
Okay.
has said, what is never to happen will not happen in spite of any amount of effort. What is to happen will not stop in spite of any amount of obstruction. That means what is destined. But destiny is what happens to us, not what happens by us.
Okay, that's it then. That's a big thing. Yeah. Thank you for pointing that last point out. Makes the difference. Bruce, you've got your hand up for a while on this topic. I forget what the topic.
Yes,
Go ahead.
thank you. Thank you. I wanted to ask Michael if this analogy is appropriate. Let's imagine that you want to cross a river and you're going to swim across the river, right? Swimming across the river is your will, right? But the current that's in the river is going to determine to a large degree where you land on the other side of the river. Does that analogy make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so I thought that might be helpful for Marty, if that makes sense.
I mean, I would say that gives a little bit of that explains it to a very slight extent, but I wouldn't say that analogy is an adequate analogy.
Right.
It's very difficult to find any analogy to explain this. All we have to understand is whatever happens to us, whatever we are given to experience, is prarabdha. Whatever we need to do in order to experience that will be made to do. But the vast majority of our actions, whether they happen to be actions that we are made to do or not, we are acting under the sway of our vasanas. And those actions that we do under the sway of our vasanas, our inclinations, our likes, dislikes, desires, hopes, fears, and so on, they are all agamya. In other words, they're fresh actions, but are going to produce fruit. And in each life, we are doing far more agamya than the fruit that we are experiencing. So in each lifetime, we experience one lifetime of fruit, but we accumulate maybe 10 or 100 lifetimes of fresh fruit because of the agamya we do. That is why there's no way we can ever exhaust the sanchita. In some schools of philosophy, they believe you have to exhaust all your karma in order to attain liberation. That will never happen. Bhagavan has given us a simple way out. You don't have to exhaust all the fruits of your past karma, because you'll never do so, because when you're experiencing the fruits of your past karma, you're generating new fruit. All we need to do to bring an end to this is to annihilate the doer. Who is the doer of action? It is ego. Ego is the doer of action and the experiencer of the fruit. So as Bhagavan says in verse 38 of Uludunaptu, if we are the doer of actions, we will have to experience the resulting fruit. So that means the very fact that we're experiencing the prarabdha means that we were the doer of those actions, means we've been acting under the sway of our will. So, I mean, it's very clear there. But the important point in verse 38 of Uludunaptu, he says, if we are the doer of action, we will experience the resulting fruit. If by investigating who is the doer of action, if we know ourselves by investigating who is the doer of action, doership will depart and all the three karmas will come to an end. Why will doership depart? Because doership is the nature of ego. Ego is the doer of the action and the experience of the fruit. So doership and experiencership go hand in hand, and they are both the nature of ego. So when Bhagavan talks about doership, that is another name for ego. So when we investigate when we investigate ourselves and know what we actually are, ego will thereby be destroyed. Therefore, the destruction of ego means destruction of the doer and of the experiencer. Then who is there to do any action or to experience any fruit? So as he says, doership will depart and all the three karmas will cease.
Michael, should we go to a couple of questions?
Yes.
I say real quick that I see that Sri Ram and Melissa have their hands up. Well, I'll get to your questions right away, as soon as we get done with a couple of questions that are sent in, I do feel an obligation to those people
Yeah.
who send in questions that we get to
Yeah.
those sometime. And the first one, will possibly only get through this first one and then go live to the group once again. It's a two-part question by two different people. It's really a similar question expressed two different ways. And Michael Tomeno, if I'm pronouncing your name right, he's with us today for the first time. So he can comment on this. And then the second part, which is similar, is from Mike Hill. Michael's is it has been mentioned that we are supposed to basically attend to the self 24/7. And I've personally put a lot of effort towards doing just that. However, I often feel burned out, and also that I'm not as present with others since I'm so very focused on staying with the self. Someone else in that chat that he was in when he heard this agreed and said it is more of a letting go, expressing it that way. I think that effort might be a mistake, Michael says, and that it isn't really an effort, but a relaxing of the self. Also, Mike Hill wrote on this same topic saying, while focusing a lot of willpower and effort towards self-attention and holding on to the I, this oftentimes makes me, Mike, feel burned out and not as present with other times. After talking to you about subsiding, Michael, it occurred to me that perhaps there should not be any effort at all, but rather a general relaxing or effortless subsiding into the self. What do you think, Michael?
Right.
Similar questions, important point.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, this is a very, very important point. Effort is absolutely necessary. And it should be obvious to anyone who understands the nature of the mind. That is the nature of the mind. What happens if we try to relax? If we just sit down and relax, does the mind come to a standstill? No, the mind, however much we try to relax the body, the mind will continue wandering. We have to make an effort to stop the mind wandering. Because the nature of the mind is to wander under the sway of its vasanas. Throughout the waking and dream state, our minds are wandering under the sway of vasanas. So if we just relax and try to do nothing, then the mind will be wandering under the sway of vasanas. That is why it is necessary to make effort to attend to ourselves. There's in the work Upadesha Manjari, which is the work recorded by, it is a series of questions and answers recorded by Swami Nathanananda, and it's in Bhagavan's Tamil collected works, and it's also in the English collected works, I think. There's in the second chapter of that text, the fourth question is, I'll just read the meaning of it. The question is, what is called summa irike? Summa irike means just being. Is what is called summa irike a state in which there is effort, or is it a state in which effort has ceased? That is the question. And the answer Bhagavan gave is, that is not a state of sombal. Sombal means idleness, lethargy, drowsiness, dullness, one in which effort has ceased. The entire extent of worldly activities, which are described as efforts in facing outwards, are only done intermittently and by parichinna manam, by a divided or limited part of the mind. In contrast, the Atma-vichara, the spiritual practice called ahamukhatil summa irike, just that ahamukhatil summa irike means just being in facing inwards or selfwards, is a full effort done with the entire mind and without interruption. And then Bhagavan concludes the answer by saying, what is Maya, which cannot be destroyed by any other means, is destroyed only by this silence, which is called complete effort. Purna, he talks about Purna Murchi. So a total full effort is required. Why? Because if we don't make the effort to attend to ourselves, our mind will naturally continue flowing outwards. It's like if you fall in a river if you don't make effort to swim against the current, you're going to be swept by that river out to the ocean. So, but since the nature of the mind is to flow outwards, that's the natural direction of the mind. It's the very nature of the mind to flow outwards. If we don't make effort to swim against this outward flowing nature of the mind by clinging firmly to self-attentiveness, we will continue wandering under the sway of our vasanas. So effort is absolutely essential in this. But the important point to understand is effort doesn't mean doing. People confuse effort with doing. Generally, most efforts we make are effort to do this or to do that. But this is not an effort to do anything. Attending to ourself is not a doing. Attending to anything other than ourself is a doing. It's a mental activity because it's a movement of our mind or attention away from ourselves towards other things. So all mental activity is doing. And that is actually effort. We are making effort to go outwards, but it seems to be effortless because of the strength of our Vishaya vasanas. So it seems to be effortless to go with the flow and to let our mind continue flowing outwards. But when we attend to ourself, attending to ourself is not a doing. It is a cessation of all doing. And to understand this clearly, we need to understand what Bhagavan has taught us about the nature of ego. In verse 25 of Ulladu, Bhagavan describes the nature of ego. In the final line of that verse, he describes ego as Uruvatra Pe Ahande. Uruvatra means formless. Pe means a demon, or Pe is a particular type of demon that will possess people. It's what in Sanskrit is called pisasa. So it's that demon whose nature is to possess people. So he describes it as Pe Ahande, ego. So ego is a formless demon that has possessed us, so to speak. So what is the nature of this formless ego is what he describes in this verse. Firstly, it's very important to bear in mind, he says ego is formless. That means ego has no form of its own. But though ego has no form of its own, it cannot rise or stand without grasping form. So what he says from the beginning of the verse is, Urupatri undam, grasping form, it comes into existence. Urupatri nikum, grasping form, it stands. Urupatri undu mika ongum, grasping and feeding on forms, it flourishes abundantly. Uruvittu urupatram, leaving form, it grasps form. So that means the very nature of ego is to grasp form. It cannot rise, it cannot come into existence without grasping form. It cannot stand without grasping form. And by grasping form, it is feeding itself, and thereby it is flourishing. So if it leaves one form, it has to grasp another form. If it doesn't grasp anything, it will subside. And as happens every day when we fall asleep, when we're too tired to continue grasping form, we subside in sleep. So what does he mean by grasping form? Since ego itself is formless, grasping form means grasping things other than itself. And by form, he's not talking just about physical forms. Any phenomenon is a form. That is, but every phenomenon is in one way or other distinguishable from other phenomena. So whatever is distinguishable from anything else is a form. So all phenomena, mental phenomena, physical phenomena, all are forms. The first form the mind grasps, as soon as it comes into existence, is the form of a body. And this body, as Bhagavan says in verse 5 of Ulladu, is a form of 5 sheaths. So what Bhagavan means when he says ego grasps the body, he means it grasps the bundle of 5 sheaths. That is the physical body, the life that animates it, the mind, intellect, and will that operate within it. So these are 5 sheaths. This is what Bhagavan collectively refers to as body. So this is the first form that the mind grasps. How does it grasp it? Does this body exist before ego rises? No. As Bhagavan makes clear in the next verse, if ego comes into existence, everything comes into existence. If ego doesn't exist, everything doesn't exist. That means when ego rises, simultaneous with its rising, it projects and experiences a body as I. That's what he means by saying, grasping form, it comes into existence. And throughout the time of its activity, until it subsides again in sleep, that is, throughout waking and dream, mind is constantly identifying itself with the body. That's what he means by saying, grasping form, it stands, in the second sentence. Having grasped this form, this body consisting of 5 sheaths, through the 5 senses of his body, it experiences so many other things. And within the mind, it's experiencing so many thoughts. So it's constantly attending to things other than itself, to the objects of the world or to the thoughts within the mind, all of which are forms. So they're all other than ego. So this is the nature of ego, constantly grasping things. Ego cannot survive for a second without grasping forms. This is why effort is necessary, because if you don't make effort to hold on to yourself, you'll naturally be continuing to grasp form, thinking of this or that or whatever. Even if you sit closing your eyes, you'll still be thinking of something. Even if you think, I'm not thinking anything now, you're still thinking. Even if people say, I sat in meditation for 20 minutes, I didn't have any thought. The very idea I sat in meditation is itself a thought, because you're identifying with the body that is sitting. And when you say for 20 minutes, that 20 minutes is also a thought, because time is also mental product. So when Bhagavan talks about thought, he's not just talking about the mental chatter. All phenomena, according to Bhagavan, are thoughts. So long as we experience anything other than ourselves, anything other than our being, in other words, so long as we're waking or dream, we are thinking. If all thoughts cease, there are 2 states in which all thoughts cease: manolaya and manonasa. Sleep, for example, is a state in which all thoughts cease. Why do all thoughts cease in sleep? Because ego has subsided. So long as ego rises, there'll be other thoughts, because it's grasping forms which are all thoughts. When ego is too tired to continue grasping form, it subsides. It lets go of everything, and because it lets go of form, it subsides. And when ego subsides, everything else subsides along with it. So sleep is a state devoid of phenomena of any kind whatsoever. And because the ego, the experiencer of phenomena, is absent there. But sleep is only a temporary dissolution of mind. Likewise, there are other temporary dissolution of mind. If you have a general anesthesia, that's a state of manolaya. If you're in a coma, that's a state of manolaya. If you swoon, that's a state of manolaya. If you practice pranayama and go into kevala nirvikalpa samadhi, that is a state of manolaya. Bhagavan said, obviously we need to sleep. Bhagavan never told us not to sleep, but Bhagavan said, as far as spiritual progress is concerned, no state of manolaya is of any use. So Bhagavan didn't recommend people trying to achieve nirvikalpa samadhi, because he said it's just a temporary dissolution of mind. And he used to tell a story to illustrate the futility of achieving such a state. He used to tell the story of a yogi on the banks of Ganga who was very adept at pranayama and other yoga practices, and was often going into nirvikalpa samadhi. One day when he woke up from nirvikalpa samadhi, he asked his disciple to fetch water from a nearby Ganga. So the disciple went to fetch water, but by the time the disciple returned, the yogi had gone back into nirvikalpa samadhi. And this time he was so deeply immersed in nirvikalpa samadhi, he remained in that state for 300 years. Because when in a really deep state of nirvikalpa samadhi, not only does all the mind stop, but from a onlooker's perspective, the body itself slows down. yogis can survive just breathing once every few minutes, one breath, and a very slight breathing. And all the metabolism slows down, so the body doesn't age. So it is possible to remain in a state like that if you're a really adept yogi for hundreds of years, and your body won't be, whereas everything else is aging, your body will be in almost like a state of suspended animation. After 300 years, that yogi woke up. And the first thought that occurred to him was water. So he angrily asked, where's my water? Within the Bhagavan explained, Bhagavan, to drive home the point of what had happened, Bhagavan said, that disciple, of course, had passed away hundreds of years ago. But all the villagers who were in the nearby village, they'd all passed away. But Ganga itself had changed course and was now several miles away. Because the Ganga had moved, the village had also moved, and a jungle had grown up around the yogi. But though he had stayed in that state for 300 years, Bhagavan said even the most superficial thought in his mind was not thereby destroyed, because the last thought was in his mind before he went in was the first thought that popped up. So that means even most superficial thought is not destroyed. What to say about all the vasanas? Vasanas are not destroyed, however long you remain in Nirvikalpa Samadhi. So laya is not a state. It's very pleasant to be in laya. We all like to sleep, but it's not a solution to our problem, because sooner or later we're going to wake up again. So the other type of dissolution of mind is what is called mano-nasa. That is permanent dissolution of mind. So in verse 13 of Upadesha, Bhagavan says, subsidence of mind is of, or dissolution of mind is of two kinds, laya and nasa. That which is subsided in laya will rise again. That which is subsided in nasa will not, if its form dies in nasa, it will not rise again. So our aim is mano-nasa. So merely bringing about the cessation of thoughts results in mano-laya, but that's not a solution to our problem. So what is the solution to our problem? That is the nature of mind. When it rises, it grasps the body as I, and it throughout the waking dream state, it's constantly grasping other forms and feeding on them. So if we stop all mental activity, what happens? The mind subsides in mano-laya. That's the aim of yoga. Yoga, as Patanjali says in the beginning of the Yoga Sutra, yoga's chitta vritti nirodha. Yoga is a stopping mental activity. That is, Bhagavan said, that is not a useful aim, because if we just stop the mental activity, what results is mano-laya. What we need to achieve is mano-nasa. So how is mano-nasa brought about? Mano-nasa can be brought about only by self-investigation, because the manas, the mind, is, as Bhagavan clarifies in verse 18 of Upadesha, enangale manam, thoughts of the mind. That is, the totality of all thoughts are what are collectively called the mind. But of all the thoughts, the first thought is the thought called I, in other words, ego, because all other thoughts are objects. Ego is the subject. The objects exist only in the view of the subject. So without the subject, there can't be any object. So the first thought of the mind, the essential thought of the mind, is this first thought I, in other words, ego, which has grasped the form and is experiencing itself as I am this body. So Bhagavan concludes verse 18 of Upadesha by saying, therefore what is called mind is I, meaning it's the thought called I, in other words, ego. So ego is the essence of the mind. So the mind will be destroyed only when ego is destroyed. And in order to destroy ego, how can we destroy ego? Ego is nothing but a false awareness of ourself. It's awareness of ourself as I am this body. I am this or I am that. We're identifying ourselves as something other than what we actually are. That false identification, I am this body, is the nature of ego. That is, the very nature of ego is to always experience itself as I am this body. Since it's a false awareness of ourself, it can be destroyed only by correct awareness of ourself. If for example, if you see a a rope and you mistake it to be a snake, how you can take a stick and try and beat that snake, but you won't kill the snake. If you want to kill the snake, there's only one way you can kill it. Look at it carefully and see, oh, it's not a snake, it's just a rope. Likewise with ego. No amount of yoga or japa or tapas or anything can destroy ego. The only thing that will destroy ego is looking at it carefully. If we look at it carefully, in other words, if we look at ourselves carefully to see who am I, we will see what we will become aware of ourselves as we actually are. When we become aware of ourselves as we actually are, this false identification will thereby be destroyed. That is, ego is the false awareness I in this body. It will be destroyed only by the correct awareness, I am I and nothing other than I. So by self-investigation, we see what we actually are. So when we attend to ourselves, when we attend to anything other than ourselves, that is feeding and nourishing ego. When we attend to ourselves, that brings about the subsidence and dissolution of ego. That is why in the next sentence of that verse 25, after saying, grasping form, it comes into existence, grasping form, it stands, grasping and feeding on forms, it flourishes abundantly, leaving form, it grasps form. He then says, pedinal autem pidicum. That literally means if seeking, it takes flight. If seeking means what? What is to seek what? What it implies is if ego seeks itself, in other words, if it seeks to know who am I, it seeks to see its own reality, what it actually is, it will take flight. That means it will subside and dissolve back into its source. So long as we are attending to anything other than ourselves, we are nourishing ego, and attending to anything other than ourselves is an activity. When we attend to ourselves, we bring about the subsidence of ego. So subsidence of ego means a subsidence of activity, because all that ego is the doer of action. When ego subsides, all actions subside along with it. So attending to ourselves is not an action, it is a cessation of action. So the effort that is required is not an effort to do anything, but an effort just to be, and to be as we actually are. And we can be as we actually are only by attending to ourselves, because by attending to ourselves, we as ego subside. And when we subside, we remain in our being as our being. So, but for that, effort is definitely necessary, because if we don't make effort, we will be constantly going outwards our attention will constantly going outwards under the sway of our vasanas. So to come to the wording here, Mike Hill writes, while focusing a lot of willpower and effort towards self-attention. Yeah, effort is necessary, but this term willpower, we need to understand what is meant by willpower. Willpower means exactly what it says. It's the power of the will. We all have willpower. The problem is, most of us have many desires, many likes and dislikes, so our willpower is scattered towards many things. In yoga or any form of spiritual practice, all spiritual practice, all forms of yoga are about one-pointedness, about focus. We are focusing our will and our attention on one thing and one thing alone. In most forms of spiritual practice, we're attending to something, we're focusing on something other than ourselves. In the case of self-investigation, we are focusing all our will and our effort on ourselves. So when our will is directed outwards towards things other than ourselves, we call it desire. When it's focused inwards towards ourself alone, we call it love, because we can't call the love to be as we actually are. We can't call that a desire, because we are always as we actually are. It is being as we actually are is not achieving anything, as Bhagavan said in that quotation from Day by Day that I read earlier. Bhagavan said, what is there to realize? The real is as it is ever. The real means ourselves. We are real. How to realize it? All that is required is this. We have realized the unreal. So what we need is to unrealize the unreal. In other words, we need to cease holding on to the unreal and thereby lending it reality. We need to hold on to ourselves and thereby subside back into our being. And Bhagavan says, that is all that is required for us to attain jnana. We are not creating anything new or achieving something that we did not have before. So trying to hold on to our being, by holding on to our being, we are subsiding and being as we actually are. We are not achieving anything new. We are letting go of everything. In verse 26 of Uludunaptu, Bhagavan says, if ego comes into existence, everything comes into existence. If ego doesn't exist, everything doesn't exist. Everything here means all phenomena. Hande yabamam, ego itself is everything. That is all these phenomena we see is nothing but, we are seeing ourselves as this whole world. We as ego are seeing ourselves as all this world, is what that implies. So all phenomena are nothing but ourselves. We are seeing ourselves as if we are many things. And then Bhagavan concludes that verse 26 by saying, therefore, investigating what this is giving up everything. Why is it giving up everything? Because investigating ego, the nature of ego is to subside when we turn our attention towards it. So by investigating ego, we are bringing about the dissolution of ego. When ego dissolves, everything else dissolves along with it, because everything else exists only in the view of ego. So self-investigation cannot be driven by desire. It can be driven only by all-consuming love, such great love that makes us willing to surrender ourselves, to give up everything, ourself included, ourself as ego, that is. So the willpower that is required in this path is not the sort of stubborn willpower, I will achieve this. It is the love to turn within and to dissolve back into our source. So it's a very subtle, that this love to know and to be what we actually are is a very, very subtle love. And it's it has to be an all-consuming love in order for us to succeed in dissolving back into our source. We need to be willing to give up everything, to sacrifice everything. We need, the word willpower tends to suggest something else. The most appropriate term to use in this context is love. And if we are honest with ourselves, we all have to admit we are all lacking in love. We don't yet have sufficient love to surrender everything, to give up everything. So we have to continue making effort to hold on to ourselves. The more we hold on to ourselves, the more we thereby weaken the Vishaya vasanas, the inclinations to go outwards, and strengthen the Sattvasana, the inclination or love to go back within. So effort is absolutely essential on this path, because this is the only way of overcoming all the Vishaya vasanas. And only when we cannot destroy all the Vishaya vasanas without destroying ego, because it's the very nature of ego to have Vishaya vasanas. But so long as the Vishaya vasanas are very strong, we're not going to be willing to surrender ourselves. So we need to practice in order to weaken the Vishaya vasanas to such an extent and to strengthen the Sattvasana to such an extent. When the Sattvasana becomes stronger than the Vishaya vasanas, it will overwhelm the Vishaya vasanas, and then only will we be willing to let go of everything and merge back into our source. And let go of everything means let go of all forms, all phenomena. But how to let go of all forms and phenomena? Only by holding on to ourselves. Every night when we fall asleep, we let go of everything. But we don't achieve the result we want, the eternal happiness. In order to achieve eternal happiness, we need to hold firmly on to ourselves and thereby let go of everything. Because it's only by knowing what we actually are that we can destroy ego, this false awareness, I am this body. regarding the problem that both Michael and Mike both seem to talk about, they talk about feeling burnt out. Yes, because we have
both are me, by the way.
okay.
Sorry, there's some confusion on that.
Okay, right. Okay, well, I rather suspected that, but since it was two names, I was we feel burnt out because we have. If you fall in a river in the strong current of a river and you try to swim against the current, after some time you're going to get very tired. Likewise, when we have strong Vishaya vasanas and we are trying to hold on to self-attentiveness, we are swimming against the current, we get tired. What do we do when we get tired? Take a rest. Go and read Bhagavan's books, remind yourself and rekindle that love to try again, and then try again. Bhagavan has said that when Bhagavan defined what is Atma-vichara, he said, Sada kalamum manate atma-vil Sada kalamum manate atma-vil vetirupatikutan atma-vichara mendrupaya. This is what he says in the 16th paragraph of Nana. That means the name Atma-vichara is only for always keeping the mind on oneself. Keeping the mind on oneself means keeping our attention on ourselves. And he says there, Sada kalamum, always. Likewise, in the 11th paragraph of Nana, he says, Oruvan tan sarupam adayam varayil, Nirantara Swarupa Smaranaye Kai Patravanayin Adu Andre Podam. That means until one attains one's Swarupa, Swarupa means our real nature, what we actually are, until one attains Swarupa, if one holds fast to uninterrupted Swarupa Smarana, self-remembrance, that alone is sufficient. Swarupa Smarana means remembrance of our own real nature. That means of our own being. So Swarupa Smarana is another way of describing self-attentiveness. So if we hold on to that self-attentiveness uninterruptedly, that alone is sufficient. So yes, Bhagavan does recommend doing this 24/7. But are we able to do so? If we're realistic with ourselves, no, because we don't yet have sufficient love to do so. So we shouldn't be disheartened because we're not able to hold on 24/7. That is what we have. That is what we are working towards. So if we're not able to let's say we had 16 hours a day in waking state and maybe a few hours in dream state. If all those 18 hours a day, say, we are not able to cling to self-attentiveness all the time, should we be dejected? No. What we should do, we should try and hold on to ourselves as much as possible. Be practical. In Gita, when talking on this subject, Krishna begins one verse by saying, Sane, sane. Gradually, gradually, we need to bring the mind to that state of subsidence, with a firm discrimination. And then he says, Atma samstam mana kritva, fix the mind in yourself. Na kinchitape chintaya, do not think of anything else whatsoever. That's one of the verses of Bhagavad Gita, but Bhagavan is translated in Tamil. So those words, sane, sane, means slowly, slowly, gradually, gradually, gently, gently. This is the way to go about it. So we shouldn't try to force ourselves with a strong willpower. We are trying to cultivate the love to know and to be what we actually are. And we are there simultaneously with cultivating this love to know and to be what we actually are. We are trying to wean our mind off its liking to attend to other things. So it's a gradual process. It's a slow process. So let's not try and drive ourselves to a point of exhaustion. We should. This is the path of jnana, the path of vichara. Vichara means investigation. So we need to go about this very intelligently. We should recognize our limitations and slowly, slowly work towards improving, cultivating more and more love to attend to ourselves, and slowly, slowly weakening the inclination to attend to anything else. If we do that, we won't feel burnt out. And regarding about what you say about I'm not as present with others as I'm so focused on staying with the self. Whether you're with others or not, are you not aware I am? Attending to ourselves need not get in the way of other activities because it's an internal thing. Generally, when you're with your, say you're with your wife and your children, are you always thinking only about what's happening at that moment? No, you may be thinking other things. You may have worries in your mind about paying the bills or about some meeting you've got in the office tomorrow or something or other. Whatever activities we're doing, our mind is often thinking so many thoughts in the background. We're very seldom wholly engrossed in one thing. Even if you're watching a very engrossing film, your mind is still thinking so many things. What you see on the screen is bringing up so many associations. So thoughts are constantly rising in the mind. All the effort, all the time and effort we spend attending to unnecessary things, if we spend that time attending to ourselves, it will not obstruct our doing other activities. We can, but ultimately, all the things that we are meant to do, we will be made to do. So Bhagavan will make us do whatever actions we need to do in accordance with prarabdha. So by clinging to self-attentiveness, what we are refraining from doing is doing agamya, letting ourselves be swayed by Vishaya vasanas. So it is possible to continue living an ordinary life as a loving husband or wife, father, mother, child of our parents, and we can function perfectly well in whatever job we have or whatever. None of these things, they cannot stand in the way of our attending to ourselves, and our attending to ourselves cannot stand in the way of these things. It's all a matter of how much love we have to attend to ourselves. If we have love to attend to ourselves, we will be attending to ourselves in the midst of all these activities. And we won't do the activities any worse just because we're attending to ourselves. This may not seem very clear to us, but it becomes clearer and clearer the more we go deep in this practice. The more we go deep in this practice, the more we will recognize that actually our life is just happening. Everything that's going on with life, this life is a dream. It's just going on like a cinema show. We don't, when we strongly identify ourselves as I am this person and I want this, I want that, we get wholly engrossed in this. But the more we attend to ourselves, the more we detach ourselves from this, and we will see all of this is going on. It's going on automatically. We don't have to concern ourselves with these things. If you're a father or if you're a husband, it's natural for you to love your wife, to love your children, and to care for them and everything. So you don't have to make any great effort for that. And if you're attending to yourself, it's not going to get in the way of your naturally being a loving and caring parent or a husband or whatever. Is that a clear answer, Michael?
I'm definitely going to have to re-listen to what you said, because I think this is a really, really important topic as I've been doing the self-inquiry on my own. So I'm relatively new to Ramana's teachings, but I've been really doing the deep diving. I think it's been actually only about a month. But I've been studying vigorously. I actually read your translation of Who Am I pretty much daily, and what I was finding was that I was putting so much attention and willpower into trying to stay in the self. Well, so when I did the self-inquiry, I found that there's a place inside of me that is peaceful and calm and just unperturbed by anything.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I was thinking perhaps incorrectly that is the self. And but I was putting so much energy and willpower into that I realized that I was tiring myself out, burning myself out, and not being as present with people. But then I found out that I didn't actually need to fight to be into that place, that I could actually just relax into it or subside into it. And that I think I mentioned in that comment that, you know, I found that it could actually just be an effortless effort, you know, that I didn't actually have to you know, I could just focus that attention and look within without actually forcing it.
Yeah. It's
So
a very subtle, there's nothing as subtle as self-attentiveness, because we are attending to the subtlest of the subtle. So the effort that is required is a subtle effort. It's not like the effort we make to do, not like the effort, but as Bhagavan said in that reply to Natanananda, the effort we make to go outwards is a we are using part of the mind and it's all scattered. But this is a very subtle, I mean, it's very difficult to put it into words, but it is an effort. Effort is definitely required, but it's a very subtle effort. It's an
Michael,
effort just to be as we are. And we
Michael,
can
did
be
you
as we
think
are only
about-
by holding on to our being.
thank you so much for answering it today. Because
Okay, right.
well, it just seemed that I was putting so much more work into it than I needed to. And then I was thinking about Ramana and how he's, you know, doing the opposite of putting effort into, you know, being in his self.
Yes, because once ego is destroyed, then it's effortless. Effortlessness is our real nature. But so long as we rise as ego, our very nature as ego is to go outwards, grasping things other than ourselves. So effort is required to hold on firmly to ourselves.
Can we even make the mistake sometimes of trying to grasp onto the self-investigation or the I? And well, because like when I think of relaxing too, it's like relaxing the hold off the vasanas, or, you know, like the desires. I don't know, well, because it just seems when I try to strong arm it, you know, it's counterproductive. But when I just relax,
we can't strong arm it. It's all a matter of love. Bhagavan often used to say, "Bhakti is the mother of jnana." Bhakti means love. We have to have that. Why we are not surrendering ourselves here and now, because we don't yet have sufficient love. So the whole of this practice is all about cultivating that love. So we just have to be patient and persevere persistent. But we need to persevere in trying again and again and again. And we fail. We keep on, our attention keeps on getting pulled out towards other things. Doesn't matter however many times it's pulled out towards other things, we gently try to bring it back to ourselves.
I think you said that perfectly. You know, then like the gentle.
Yeah,
You know, like it can just be, you know, it doesn't need to be a fight.
Yeah.
Because I guess a lot of the stuff that I'm actually relaxing is the trying to grasp the vasanas and realizing that they're not necessary. And you mentioned the love. One thing that I've been finding really interesting lately is that if I relax my heart, it seems that I'm just capable of sending out so much more love to people and to everywhere, and it seems to actually help my self-inquiry a lot.
Yeah.
Michael, James, is it okay if we go to the next question, because I think it's an important
Yeah.
one.
Yes, I think so.
And I want to
Thank
get this one in real quick. And before I wanted to add one thing, because certain times, all of us who have been familiar with you for a long time, there are core definitions, explanations that you repeat over and over, and I'm really glad you do. It sinks in for different people at different times, and I'm one of them. But today you said yet again that ego is nothing more than a false awareness of ourselves. I get lots of inquiries from people because I'm the host facilitator. And I gotta tell you, there's many people out there who still think of ego as a mysterious dark power over us, but it is not. according to your definition.
We are that mysterious dark power. Ego is not something other than ourselves. We are self, but it's we, that is, ego is not what we actually are, but it's what we now seem to be because we've identified ourselves with something other than what we actually are.
One of the problems is we're
So
raised.
ego, that is, Bhagavan explained very nicely in verse 24 of Ulladu. He says the Jada body does not say I. Jada means the body is Jada, meaning it has no awareness of its own. So it doesn't say I. When he says it doesn't say I, he means it's not aware of itself as I. So the body is devoid of awareness, so it's devoid of the awareness I. Satchit, the being awareness, doesn't rise. In between one thing I rises as the extent of a body. Because it rises, it's not Satchit. Because it's aware of itself as I, it's not the body. So it is neither Satchit, which is what we actually are, nor is it the body, which is what we now seem to be. It's some spurious entity that rises in between. Taking on it from Satchit, it usurps its existence and its awareness. I am. And from the body, it limits itself within the limits of the body, the form of the body. So it's neither this nor that. If we investigate it, there's no such thing, so it takes flight. So we seem to be ego only so long as we're looking outwards. If we turn our attention back within to see who am I, there's no such thing as ego to be found. That's why Bhagavan says in verse 17 of Ulladu, there he uses the word mind, but in this context, mind means ego. He says, if one investigates the form of the mind without forgetting, there's no such thing as mind at all. This is the direct path at all, for all. This is the direct path for all. So we seem to be ego only because we're looking outwards. But if we try to look at ourselves, has anyone ever seen this thing called ego? There's no such thing. It's only because we don't look at ourselves carefully enough, but we seem to be ego. So in order to get rid of ego, all we need to do is to look at ourselves carefully enough.
It is not a dark power. Great. Thank you. I'm going
And
to
looking at ourselves is not one eye looking at another eye. That is, we ourselves are looking at ourselves. In other words, we are being self-attentive.
Well, we've got 20 minutes left and 37 people here. I'm going to skip question number 2. This will be the first time we've only got through the first question because I have in the waiting room there, Sri Ram is first and then Melissa and Bruce. And if it's okay with you, Michael, I'm going to have them succinctly point their questions to you one at a time to see if we can get quick answers into all of theirs.
Yes.
Sri Ram, can you make it succinct?
Yes, sir. I sure will make it succinct. And thank you so much, Kay and Michael. It's awesome. I love what you said today. A very memorable sentence. When the willpower goes outside, it's desire. And when the willpower is turned inside, it's love. That was just mind-blowing. You know, when you always talk about we need love, love, love to get that, that means we have to dread this willpower within and take it away from outside. But I think that's a two-step process at the same time. It's awesome.
Not even a two-step process, because by turning it within, we are withdrawing it from outside. We don't have to withdraw it from outside and then turn it within. Just turning within is sufficient.
Awesome, awesome. Quick question.
That's why Bhagavan said, in yoga they say chitta vritti nirodha, but that's not practical, because what he meant when he said that's not practical, it'll result only in manolaya. All that is required is Atma-vichara, that is attending to ourselves, investigating ourselves. If we investigate ourselves, we as ego will subside, and all the other chitta, when the aham-vritti subsides, all the chitta-vrittis will subside along with it. So the aim of yoga is achieved by this Atma-vichara, but that is not the target. We are not aiming to stop the mind. We are aiming to know ourselves. By knowing ourselves, we stop the mind.
That's totally incredible. And the other beautiful thing is that destroys all the vasanas and all the
Yes.
sanchit karma and agami karma and kriyaman
Yes.
karma. Everything is burnt up in one fell swoop.
This
It's
is the
just a
beauty of
massive flow.
Bhagavan's teaching. That is, we can know ourselves only by attending to ourselves. But in order to attend to ourselves keenly enough to know ourselves, we need to purify the mind. That means we need to weaken the Vishaya vasanas.
Yes.
So how to weaken the Vishaya vasanas? By the same means, by self-attentiveness is the most effective means to weaken the vasanas, and it's the only
Yes.
means to know ourselves.
Yes.
So Bhagavan has made it so simple for us.
Yes.
Very
I have
good.
just a quick question. My question now is,
Yeah.
you talked about the willpower and so on, prarabdha, and we always say that we are here on this path now by Bhagavan's will, because he's like a gardener who gets the flowers of our karma and gives us as a bouquet as a product of the karma. The very fact we are on this path. And in the Gita, if you mention Gita, there is a sentence of Upadrashta, Anumanta, Bharata, Bhokta, Maheshwara, pages. Bhagavan first acts as a witness, then he acts as a friend who supports us, and then he acts as a doer, and then he becomes one with us. Anything to that, do that, that's a quick, you mentioned the Gita, Bhagavan, I think, likes that sentence as well. But my main question was sleep and self-realization. You beautifully described 3 stages. Let me just tell you, I want to go to a movie. I see a big movie theater, and I said, man, I want to be happy today. Guy says, go in the last theater inside. I go there, I see cartoons, it's dark. Then I say, I'm not happy. I come out in the middle theater, I see Star Wars, a lot of action. I'm
Sriram,
still
please
dark
ask the
theater.
question because we're running out of time quickly.
Yeah, I know. Then I come out, and the outside theater is dark, but there's only a white screen. Then I hear a voice of Michael James coming through me through the door. Come out if you want to be happy. And then he takes me out on the street, and he shows me Arunachala and Bhagavan walking on the path. So you talked about the ignorance in your book beautifully, that there is a Vikshepa and Avarana. Avarana is the covering power, and Vikshepa is the manifestation power. So is mind, ego the same as this Maya, Avarana, and Vikshepa?
Yes. Bhagavan made that very clear. There's no such thing as Maya other than ego. The Aravana, the covering, the veiling, is the false awareness, I am this body. As a result of being aware of ourselves as I am this body, we are consequently aware of all this. So that's the Vikshepa. As Bhagavan says in verse 4 of Uludunapadu, if oneself is a form, the world and God will be likewise. If oneself is not a form, who can see their forms as and how? So identifying ourselves as I am this body, that is the Aravana. Knowing all these other things as a consequence of that is the Vikshepa.
Sriram, thank you.
They actually go hand in hand. You can't have one without the other. It is often said that Vikshepa ceases in sleep, the Aravana remains. But even that is not true. That is there for explanatory purposes, but it's not true. According to Bhagavan, in sleep there is no ego, and therefore there is nothing. Nothing means nothing other than ourselves.
You just said that
thank you
in
for your
deep
question.
sleep,
We're going to
in
move on
sleep
to
we
Melissa
cannot.
right now. Sriram,
It's just,
thank you for your question. We're almost out of time. We got 3 more
Okay.
people waiting.
no problem.
Melissa,
Thank you,
Bruce, and
Ted.
Todd. So let's go to Melissa and come back with questions next week.
That's okay. I'm perfectly happy to pass and allow someone else to ask a question.
Thank you, Melissa. Bruce, you have a question.
Yeah, the reference that you made, bhakti is the mother of jnana. Is it correct to say bhakti alone is the mother of jnana?
Of course. Well, Bhagavan didn't say bhakti alone.
I know, that's what I'm asking. Is it implied?
How many mothers can someone have?
Well, exactly. That's what I mean. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So it's perfect. Thank you. Sorry.
Yeah. Without love, how can we without love, what is jnana? Jnana is the state of complete self-surrender. When we let go of, when ego is completely dissolved, that is jnana. That requires all-consuming love. So without love, there's no such thing as jnana.
Thank you for
Any
your
jnana
bhakti.
without love is just, it's not real jnana. It's just some thoughts, ideas.
Right, exactly.
Thank you, Bruce. Tosh, you had your hand up somewhere. There you are. Go ahead. You're next.
So, Michael, I have a question about Karana Sariram. I was
Yes.
reading Sadhu Om's Ramana Vai. Thanks for putting a Tamil version on your website. I was so
Yes.
happy to see it. And the way you describe deep sleep versus Karana Sariram, I see there is some differences. Can you please elaborate on that?
Yeah, that is, there are different levels of explanation are given. But the usual explanation that is given in Advaita, what that is, people ask, if ego doesn't exist in sleep, then why does it rise again in waking? That's the usual question. To satisfy people who think that ego, who give too much reality to ego, it is said, yes, though ego doesn't exist in sleep, the karana sarira remains in sleep, and the vasanas that constitute the karana sarira cause ego to rise again. That satisfies many people. But if we think deeply about it, that's not a very satisfactory answer, because vasanas are, whose vasanas are they? They're ego's vasanas. So there can't be a karana sarira without ego.
Got it. Got it.
Bhagavan is very, very clear. Though sleep is usually considered to be a state of darkness, of tamas or whatever, and the state, it is actually, sleep is our own natural state. Bhagavan said very clearly, Murugan has recorded in Guru Vachaka Kavai, when we know what we actually are, we will realize that the state that was previously taken to be a dull state called sleep is actually Turiya. It's nothing, there's no difference between sleep and Turiya. The only difference between sleep and Turiya is not in that state. From the perspective of ego in waking and dream, sleep seems to be a temporary state, whereas Turiya is eternal. So the only defect in sleep is the fact that we've come out of it. And in whose view have we come out of it? Only in the view of ego. So the
Beautiful.
defect in sleep exists only in the view of ego in waking and dream. Actually, according to Bhagavan, sleep is our eternal state. Even now we're in that state.
Thank you so much.
And in
It
order
makes so
to
much
see
sense.
that we're in that state, all we need to do is to see ourselves. But
Thank you.
in Advaita, there's so many different explanations are given to satisfy people at different levels of understanding. Bhagavan uses, that is, Bhagavan made it very clear. Ego doesn't exist even when it seems to exist. We all know ego doesn't seem to exist in sleep, but people still want to exist. No, ego still exists there in seed form. So we are giving so much reality to ego, but we're insisting that it must exist in some form, in karana sarira form or some form, even when it doesn't seem to exist. According to Bhagavan, it doesn't exist even when it seems to exist. So why should we pretend it exists when it doesn't even seem to exist? So Bhagavan's teachings, Bhagavan's teachings are pure Advaita, but Bhagavan offers us Advaita in its most undiluted form. But there are also, for people who are not willing to accept this undiluted Advaita taught by Bhagavan, there's also Advaitas, there's so many other more diluted explanations that are given to suit people. But as Bhagavan said, all these other explanations, they're answers given to the questions of others. In Uludunapdu Anabandam, there's a verse in which, well, one of the explanation that is often given about the state of Vijnani is that for Vijnani, agamya and sanchita come to an end, but prarabdha remains. Even Shankara has given this explanation in his bhashyas on the Upanishads or wherever. Why did he give this explanation? Bhagavan has explained in a verse in Nuladunaptu Anubandham. Bhagavan says it's an answer given to the questions of others. When he says questions of others, he means those who are not ready to understand the deeper teaching, they have to be given teachings at a more superficial level. Even Bhagavan often gave more superficial explanations, because as Bhagavan said, teaching has to be according to a taught. So if we read books like Talks and Day by Day, we'll see Bhagavan is answering at many different levels to suit the people who are asking questions from different levels. But if we want Bhagavan's deepest teachings, we can find them very clearly in his own original writings, in works like Uladunapadu, Nana, Upadeshundya, Amma-vichara. Here he's giving us his Aranatyastuti Panchakam, he gives us his teaching in an undiluted form.
Thank you so much. It makes so much sense. Thank you.
Thank you. And Michael, I think to end with, since we have 6 minutes left.
Can I just say one more thing on that? Because it's very important.
Sure.
This subject of sleep is very important. If it is true that Vikarana Sarira remains in sleep, what evidence do we have that we are not Vikarana Sarira? One of the basic teaching methods of Advaita is to analyze the three states. And we analyze the three states to understand that what exists in sleep is only ourself and nothing other than ourself. So if the same Advaita that says in sleep you alone exist, if the same Advaita also says in sleep Vikarana Sarira exists, then maybe I'm Vikarana Sarira. What evidence do I have I am not Vikarana Sarira? So we need to, even the deepest spiritual teachings, we need to read them with discernment, and we need to understand. But among the deeper teachings, often more superficial teachings are given to satisfy others. But if we want the deepest teachings, we need to use our Nitya Anitya Vastu Viveka. That's the first qualification for following this path of Advaita, according to Shankara. So it's if this Karana Sarira exists in sleep, that means it exists in waking, it exists in dream, it exists in sleep. Therefore, it's permanent. Then we can be satisfied. Karana Sarira is all we are. Obviously not. It's obviously not permanent, because it appears only in waking and dream, but we seem to have vasanas. Is anyone aware of any vasanas in sleep? So why should we suppose they exist there? Oh no, they exist in a form of darkness. Who says sleep is a state of darkness? It seems to be a state of darkness only from the perspective of ego and waking and dream. According to Bhagavan, sleep is a state of light, pure awareness.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Beautiful. Mike, can I ask one quick question to make up on that, Ted, please, on the sleep?
Yeah. Okay.
Michael, can I ask him a quick question about that, Mike?
Well, we only got 4 minutes. I'm sorry. Bring it back next time, because I want to end with somebody who's been waiting for a long time with a fun question. I'm sorry. From Cheryl, and this is a question that several people have commented on in parts. Michael, I want your take on it, although I think I know what your take's going to be. It's about the yogi who fell asleep into a trance, and 300 years later comes out asking for the water.
He didn't fall asleep into a trance. He went into Nirvikalpa Samadhi, Kevala Nirvikalpa Samadhi, the aim of yoga.
So the question is, and I think this was meant to have fun with it. So who was there, Michael, after 300 years to hear the yogi asking for water? I find it an interesting story. Cheryl, this is from Cheryl.
Well, there was no one there because he was in the midst of a jungle.
Well,
but the point,
he would know coming out.
He would know. He would know. Yes.
Yeah.
So it's a question of the ego.
Perhaps he would have he would have wondered, I've been in this state for 300 years. What benefit have I got from it? And perhaps he may have started looking for further guidance, and someone would have told him you're now in the 20th century, and there's a sage in Tiruvannamalai called Bhagavan Ramana. You can go and ask him for guidance.
Yeah.
Bruce, I think I recognize your voice commenting on this.
Yeah, well, I put it in a chat. I responded to Cheryl, was it? Or what was Sherry?
That's Carol. Yeah.
Yeah, I responded to her. I don't know if it was a good response. I think it was okay. You can read it if you want. It's in the chat.
Okay.
Or maybe it's private. I don't know.
I don't think so. It's to the public. So and it's a pretty common question, I think, for those of us who have heard that story. I want to thank everybody for being here today. I want to also apologize for having to be the facilitator, weaving in and out of questions as much as we could. I'll repeat that we only got one printed question in today, which means, Michael, I think if I remember correctly, we have 36 to go. I think we'll have time. We'll get to them when we can.
Yeah, there were some other good questions, but we'll try and deal with them next time.
Yeah, and it was an excellent response to a very important question, as you stressed several times too. A final word from you, Michael. Are you okay? Or will we see you in a month?
I hope so. Who knows? I'm here now, but I don't know what will happen in a month.
I want the dream of life to continue for another 30 days because I enjoy all your comments. Everybody else does here too.
Dream will come to an end when it comes to an end. When we are willing to wake up, it will come to an end. It's our lack of willingness to wake up that is perpetuating this dream.